In this tutorial, we're going to go over some basic modeling techniques. So to start off, we're going to go to our command panel, make sure we're on the creation tab, make sure we have geometry selected, and we're just going to make a box. Make a box in the center. I'm holding control, left click and dragging to build out from the center of the box. Then release the left mouse button, move my mouse up, click one time to complete the operation, then zoom back out. Now, every time you create something, you know that you're still in creation mode when the item on the command panel is still highlighted in blue. So you need to right click in your viewport to disable that. Make sure you're not in creation mode. So right now, this box, we are in object mode and we want to go into sub-object mode in order to edit this box. Because right now, if we go to the modify panel, we see that we have some parameters here where we can change the length, the width, and height. But instead of using parameters to change these values, we're going to edit this directly by converting this to an editable poly. So there's two ways you can convert to editable poly. You can right click on the box, go to object properties, convert to editable poly. That's one way. The other way is you can right click in the modifier list area, convert to editable poly. So we're just going to convert it here. So now you're in editable poly mode and you notice that your selection over here has changed. So you have different items in this menu here now, and we're still under the modify tab. But now you have a selection tab here where you can select vertices, edges, borders, polygon, and elements. And now you can select your vertex mode, and now you can select different modes here. Now you have your vertices on your box here. Now sometimes you can select your vertices here one by one, or you can do a marquee selection around your vertices like this. And next, you can go to customize, go to preferences. Now sometimes when you start off max, your vertex ticks are a little bit too small to see, so you need to remake this. So go into viewports, you go to show vertices as dots. This size right here directly controls the size of these vertex ticks right here. So you need to, let's say if you want to make this a little bit bigger, if you type in this, go to size to 10, hit OK, and now you see your vertex ticks are a little bit bigger now. So now you can have a little bit better visibility for your vertex ticks on your boxes. So now click on your edge mode. In edge mode, you can select the edges of the box. So you'll see them highlighted in red when you select the edges. So this is edge mode. The next mode is border mode. Now border mode, you cannot select anything currently. And the reason you can't select anything is because this box is fully enclosed, meaning the normals are fully facing each direction. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to go to Polygon Mode. I'm going to click on one of the sides of the box here. You see this highlighted. And I'm just going to hit the delete key. And now this box is opened up. So now if I go back to border mode, you can see now I can select the border right here where I deleted the face. So this is going to select all of the edges on the outside where that face previously was. So this is border mode. Now if you want to close this box back up, you can simply, while selecting in border mode and selecting on the border, you can go into, scroll down to edit borders and press cap. And now it will close this box back up. The next mode is element mode. And with element mode, whatever you click, you're going to select the entire element. So now, to demonstrate sub-element mode, I'm going to make a completely different object. Let's delete this out of the scene. And let's make a teapot instead. So go back to your create pad, your geometry, go to teapot, and now you have your teapot here. I'm going to hit Alt W to maximize my viewport so I can see it a little better. And then when you look at the teapot from the top, you can see that there's a little gap here between the top of the teapot and the base of the teapot because these elements are separated. Now if I go to the Modify tab, you see that you have some parameters here where you can change the radius and you can change segments. Now you can't see segments right now because I'm not in edge face mode. So to turn on edge faces, you simply go to your edge faces here. Now notice mine says smooth and highlights. Now yours might say shaded mode, and I'm going to show you the reason why mine says something different. And also down here, mine says adaptive degradation. Now previously in your 3ds Max install for ICT Tech, you notice that when you go to your viewport labels here, you have different parameters here. You have different things available. You used to see in realistic and shaded mode. Now mine says smooth and highlights, and that is because I changed my display driver. So if you go to customize preferences, see down here where it says display drivers. Right now I'm using Direct 3D 9.0. Now if I go to choose driver, I can revert back to Direct 3D, and now I have these options here. Now the default option is the nitrous viewport, and with the nitrous viewport selected, the options are going to change. So I'm going to hit OK, and it says display changes will take effect the next time you start 3ds Max. So I'm just going to hit OK, but we're going to continue here with the lesson because that's not really important. Now for the teapot, I'm going to convert this to an editable poly, like so. And now I'm going to click on element mode, and now each piece is separated into sub-elements. So this is what element mode shows you, that these parts are actually separated. They're not together. So I can take this piece right here, go to select and move this out, move this up, move this out. So now it kind of gives me an exploded view of this object. Now notice the bounding box that is surrounding the object. As I move any one of the sub-elements away from it, the bounding box adjusts accordingly. So I'm still in sub-object mode. So if I click off of element, now I'm back in object mode, because now when I move it, it's going to move the entire object. So next up, let's take a look at normals. To demonstrate this, I am going to make a little bit different object. Let's make a geosphere. I'm just going to drop it on stage. Now right now, the normals are facing the correct direction. They're facing outward. If I go to edge faces, you can see the segments that make up this geosphere. Now to demonstrate what normals are, I'm going to flip these normals so you can see the inside of this object. Now to do that, this is a two-step process. The first step you have to do is right-click on the object, go to Object Properties, check Backface Cull, hit OK. Now, right now you didn't see it do anything, but what Backface Cull is doing is telling the opposite side of the normals to be not visible. So now if I go to Modify tab and I go to Normal, now you can see what that's done. Now I can see directly through this geosphere because the normals are actually inverted now. See here it says flip normals. So this is the correct direction for the normals, facing outward. This is flipping the normals facing inward. Now what this is useful for is, let's say you have a room that you want to create. So I'll create a box. So I'll create a box from scratch, and this is going to be my room that I want to create. And I want to put furniture in this room, but it's kind of hard to see inside the room because the normals are facing outward instead of inward. So what you can do is, same process, I'm going to do it backwards this time. First, I'm going to drop a normal modifier on it. Now you see this turned black. I'm going to right click, go to Object Properties, and turn on Backface Color. So now I can see through this room here, this box that's going to be designated as my room. So now if I want to go through and start to put furniture in here, like little boxes here and there, I can do that. And I can see straight through it no matter which direction I am facing. So this is helpful for when you are doing an interior room. So next up, let's make another box, and I'm going to demonstrate why it is important to have 1 by 1 by 1 for your segments when you're first creating a box. Now when you convert this to an editable poly, like so, right now if I want to change the height of this, I can do it several ways. On Polygon Mode, I can select the very top polygon and just move it up on the Z-axis, change it. I can select Edge Mode and select all 4 edges here at the top and move it up and down. I can go to Vertex Mode, select all 4 vertices, move this up and down. So there's 3 different ways you can change the height of this box. Now I'm going to show you the difference if I add segments to the box prior to convert it to editable poly. So if I go to box, do the same thing, and this time I'm going to add segments on it. Let's say I add 3 by 3 by 3. So now I have some more segments on this box. You see the lines here, vertical and horizontal. I'm going to change the color of this. Now I'm going to convert to editable poly. And now I want to do the same exact operation I did here. But now, since I have more segments, it's going to create more work. So now when I select vertices, I have more vertices to select. So this could take a lot longer than it needs to. So now, instead of clicking the vertices individually, I would have to do a rectangle selection around top vertices, then move it this way. Now if I want to do this with edge mode, if I try to select the top row of edges, it's also going to select the edges around the corners here. So now if I tell it to shrink, now I have the top row, well, the top faces where the edges are surrounding. So now I can move this up and down. If I go to Polygon Mode, click the center here, hit grow. Now it grows out that selection. And now I can move the polygons up and down. Now you see that this took a little bit longer and it took a little bit more steps to complete because I have more segments on my box. So this is just something to be mindful of when you're converting to editable poly. Make sure you have no segments to begin with. So let's talk about adding segments. So let's say I go back to this box and I go to edge mode and I want to add some segments in here. What I can do is do a rectangle selection around, make sure I have all 4 sides selected for the edges, go into connect mode. Now if I hit the connect button, it's just going to drop an edge right through them. So it's always going to be perpendicular to the edge that you're selected on. So I'm going to undo that. Now, connect settings. I'm going to go to segments, and I'm going to increase the segments here. So when you click on settings here, it's going to pop up a connect edges menu here. So now you can select how many segments you want to put on your box. So let's say I want to have 10. Let's drop that down to something like 3. And I'm going to show you what pinch does. So the next option is pinch. Now when I move this, notice that it takes the two outer segments that I created and it pinches between the top and the bottom. Next up we have slide. So what slide does is it's going to take all of your segments and slide it in either direction. Now all I'm doing to change this is left clicking, hold, and drag. So this is how all of the little spinners work in 3ds Max. Left click, hold, and drag. So I'm just going to hit OK. And now I'm going to put some segments going the opposite direction, perpendicular to this. So I want to select everything going around this box here. But I want to go all the way around to the other side so that it connects. Because right now, if I go here to connect settings, and I make this row of edges here again, you see that it kept my original segments 3. I hit OK. Now notice what this did. It only made segments going on what I had selected. So now these lines are not connected at all. So now I'm going to have to do the same operation over here and then connect it here. So instead of doing it this way, I'm going to hit undo. So I'm back to this selection. What I want to do is I want to do a ring selection around these edges. So I'm going to click on the first edge in the ring. I'm going to hold the shift key, click the next edge. And now what it's going to do is it's going to ring around all of these edges. So now all of these edges are selected. Go back to the connect settings. Now my segments are going to go all the way around the box. So I'm going to hit OK. So now you can see the segments are going all the way around the box. So this is the connect settings, and this is how you add more segments to your object. Next up, I want to show you some polygon modeling. So go to the Polygon Mode, and let's say you want to build upon this box here. You want to extrude this out. That's the next operation, is extrude. So I'm going to pull these faces outward. So click on Extrude Tool, and you left click and drag. If I go up, it's going to go out. If I go down, it's going to go inward. I want this to go outward. So once you've made your extrude, make sure you turn it off by right clicking. Now you're back into your move mode, and now you can take the faces that you have currently selected and move them out like so. I'm going to do another extrude. Now if I keep hitting extrude like this and click left click and drag it, it's just going to create more and more segments. Now if you want to have finite controls in here where you actually key in the value, that the amount that you want it to extrude by, instead of using the extrude command, you can use the settings for extrude. Now here you'll get a little pop-up menu, and it's going to ask you which mode do you want to select it in. You have 3 different modes. You have group, you have normal, you have polygon. Now to demonstrate this, I'm going to do a different type of selection. So let's go over to my box over here. And right now, if I try to click over here, I can't select this box. It's because I am still in sub-object mode for this object here. So you need to deselect what you have over here by clicking it, left clicking again, And now you're out of sub-object mode and you're back in object mode. Now you can click the other object. I'm just going to move this over a little bit and go into Polygon mode. And now what I want to do is I want to select this loop around here of polygons. Now just like we did with the edges, we can do a loop selection for polygons. So I'm going to click right here in the center, the first polygon in the loop, and now I want to click this next polygon in the loop. But before I do that, hold shift, click, and now it's going to loop all the way around. So now I'm going to go to the Extrude Tool, go to Settings, and now look what that did. So I'm going to change the height here, and look what it's doing. It's moving my polygons out in one direction. It's moving it out to this direction this way, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to change the mode from group to local normal, and now it's moving all my vertices, well, polygons outward based on the way the normal is facing. Now you notice that it didn't actually move it out in a straight direction. So right here, when you have an edge, when you have a corner, it's going to interpolate between the corner, and this edge is going to kind of drop inward a little bit. So you're going to kind of get this curved effect. Now the next option is by polygon. So now what it did was it took what was selected, and I'm extruding out by the individual faces. So each individual face is being extruded out in the direction that it is currently oriented. But what I want to do is I want to use local normal, but we're going to fix this little bending issue here. So I'm just going to hit OK. Now with this selected, I'm going to select just these row of faces here. Now to continue your selection, I'm hitting click the first polygon in the selection, hold control, click the next one, click the next one. So that's how you add to your selection, is by holding control. If I want to take away from my selection, I hold alt and I click the same face that is currently highlighted. Now I can remove my selection. So hold control, increases. So now I want to flatten this out a little bit so it's flush with this surface here. So there's two ways you can do this. There's a button here called Make Planar. And if I click this, it's going to flatten that surface right out. So I'm going to go through here again. I'm going to tell it to make planar. I'm going to flatten that out. Over this side, see how it's curved? Make planar. Flattens that surface out. And the last side, make planar. Flattens that surface out. So now this is kind of the effect that I was going for. I wanted my box to extrude straight out, and I wanted to be straight along all the edges. So next up, I want to show you the Inset Tool. So I'm going to select these three faces here, and I want to make a border around this because I want this to be, let's say, windows here. Now to do this, make sure you're in Polygon mode, and I'm just going to scroll to my Edit Polygons. What we're looking for is Inset. Now you can click this, and just like Extrude, you can click and drag on it, and now you'll see this changes. And what this is doing is it's making a border around my current selection, and it's moving my current selection inward. Now if I let go, right click, left click off, you can see what it did. It made a border around these faces. So now if I select these faces here, I can go to Extrude, and I can extrude those backwards. So now this is kind of inset, and I have a little lip right here. Now I also want to go in here, inset this, and this time I want to bring this outward. So you can get some really cool shapes with using the extrude and the inset tools. Now let's say I want to duplicate some faces in here and I want to move them outward. Let's take this whole top part here and I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to drag it along the y-axis. And what it's going to do is it's going to make a duplicate. And when I let go of shift, it's going to ask me if I want to clone to element or clone to object. Clone to object is going to make a completely separate object, and I can name it here. Clone to element is going to keep it housed in the current element. So that's what I want. I want to use this save. I want to clone it to this element. Hit OK. So now you can see that it's part of this element. It is now a sub element. So now I can click and have two different pieces. Go back to Polygon Mode. And the next thing I want to do is I want to make a bridge between this object and this object. So to make a bridge, I'm going to select one face and I'm going to select the opposite face in the opposite direction, and I want to put some polygons right in between there. So if you use the bridge command, if you just click bridge, it's automatically going to bridge the gap. I'm going to do the same thing here. Click this face, click this polygon. I'm going to use bridge. So now these objects are bridged together. Now you'll notice here that I have this little gap here. So let's close this gap. Now there's a couple different ways that you can close the gap. I'm going to actually use the bridge tool for edge mode. So I'm going to select edge mode, select this edge here, and I want to bridge to this edge over here. So with this edge and this edge selected, I'm just going to hit bridge. Now what I want to do is I want to also close this gap here, but using bridge is not going to work out too well with this because this is one edge versus 1, 2, 3 edges. So if I were to select these 3 edges and this edge and try to use the bridge command, watch what happens. Now you see it did close the gap, but the segments are pulling from the corners now because it doesn't know where to direct the lines, and this is not ideal. So I'm going to undo that and undo this a completely different way. So I'm going to go to border mode and select this open border here. I'm going to move my edit borders up a little bit. So I'm going to click on the tab and just move it up. So now it's over here. It's a little bit easier to see. I'm going to hit cap, select this, hit cap. So now this is closed up. But now I want the lines, the segments, to run along and connect down here. Right now they don't connect. So there's two different ways you can go about doing this. You can use what is called a cut tool, which I'm going to show you in a second. And you can also use the connect tool, but it will not work out the way you want it to. Now I know that there's 1, 2 edges that I need to connect. So I'm going to go to these middle 2 edges here, and I want to put a line straight through these. So I'm going to use the connect tool, make 2 edges, hit OK. So now we have the ones in the middle. So now we just need to connect these lines with these lines. So if I go to vertex mode, you see that this here and this here needs to be connected. So now I can just use connect, and it'll connect that line between these 2 vertices. Select this vertex, and connect. Select this vertice and this vertice, connect. like so. So now, if I want to do a loop around this selection for the edge mode, if I click this edge here, hold shift, and click the next edge, it's going to loop all the way around. So now I can go in here and kind of move this edge over a little bit without actually changing the shape. I can just kind of move it off anywhere I want. Now make sure you don't actually cross any edges here, because now your normals are being flipped inside out. And you'll see some stretching going on here, and this is not ideal. You never want to cross your segments like this, because your geometry is going to be messed up. You can see this here, how this looks. It doesn't look right. So just be mindful of that. Undo that. So these are some basic modeling techniques. So what we did for our lab in class is we made a skyscraper. So to demonstrate how simple that is, we're going to start off with just a box. Going to bring this up. Now, as I said before, I don't want to have any segments on my box when I'm creating this initially. So I'm going to turn my segments off here. Then I'm going to right click to end creation mode. Now I'm in object mode. Going to go to your modify tab, right click, convert to editable poly. So now you get these settings over here. I'm going to go into Polygon mode, and I'm just going to build up a skyscraper really quick. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to inset this, build this up another layer, bring this up on the z-axis, going to inset again, extrude this up, bring this up on using the move tool. So the whole time I have the move and select and move tool selected. I'm not using rotation, I'm not using scale right now. So just make sure when you're in your editable poly that you're using your actual move and select tool. Now sometimes if you go and you click on a polygon and you start to click and drag, you'll accidentally move your polygon, and that's not ideal. So I'm going to undo that. If you go to just your select object mode, now when you select your faces, you can't accidentally move them. So that's kind of important. So here's my building. Going to extrude this up just one more time. But first I'm going to make a little inset for the little antenna that just goes at the top. Going to use the extrude tool, extrude it up. Right click to end the operation. Go to my move tool, bring it up a little bit taller. So I want this to be my little antenna on the building. And I want this to taper at the top so that the top is actually smaller. But right now it's kind of a boxy shape, and that's the wrong shape. I want to convert this into a cylinder. Now right now my little bounding box here, this is kind of getting in the way of seeing my edges here. So you can turn this off. So if you go hit your plus sign here, okay, so it's not in my menu here because I have the wrong Direct 3D driver selected, but if you hit J on the keyboard, it'll toggle off your selection brackets. So I want this off. Go into edge mode, and I'm just going to select everything around here, so 4 edges. And I want to make this into like a cylinder shape. So I'm going to use the Chamfer tool. I'm going to click on this, and when I hover over the edge, you see the icon changes. So I'm going to click and drag, and you'll notice what it's doing. It's kind of changing the shape of this. So now if I look at it from the top, it kind of looks like a stop sign. And if I go to the bottom here, you notice that it made some different geometry here. And I can click through this again, do the same operation. And now this is more of a cylindrical shape. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to undo that and show you a different way. So instead of using chamfer here, I'm going to go to chamfer settings. And now I can specify the amount that I want to chamfer these edges. I'm just going to put it on an even 3. And I only want one segment. And I'm going to iterate this by hitting this little plus sign. When I hit the plus sign, it's going to complete the operation again. So now I need to change the chamfer amount. When I get it like I want it, I can hit OK. So now this is more of a cylindrical shape. And go into vertex mode. I'm going to select all these vertices here and go to my uniform selection tool. And I'm just going to scale this down like so. So now we have a pointy antenna at the top. So let's say I want to make some windows in here, or I want to make the illusion of some windows. So I'm just going to select this middle part of the building here, and I want to make sure I get everything up top on this fill here. So I'm going to select this, select all of this, holding control. So I make sure I have all this selected, and I want to separate this out. So I'm going to go to detach. Now it's going to ask you, do you want to detach as an object? And right now, I don't have anything selected, so it's going to make another object, and that's not what I want. I want to detach to element. So now it's going to stay where it is inside the element, except it's going to be a separate element. Now, if I do detach as clone, it's going to duplicate this and keep the original in the same place. I don't want to do that. I want to use detach to element, hit OK. So now, if I go to element mode, you see that these pieces are separated now because I separated the middle piece that was connecting these two. So these are now separate. So we're just going to worry about this row here. And now I want to run some segments going along here. So I'm going to do a ring selection again. But it's going to be kind of hard to select the edges that I want because I'm currently touching the same line for this bottom element here. So they're kind of overlapping each other and they're kind of in the way. So what I want to do is I want to hide these so that I cannot accidentally touch these. So I'm going to select this middle element here. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm looking for hide unselected. So I click this and now all I can see is this part here. So now I can do my selection ring. So again, that's you click the first edge, you hold shift, click the next edge, and it's going to loop around. Now notice it didn't go all the way around this side because there's nothing connecting the two, so it can't go all the way around. So I have to do the same operation here. So hold control, hold shift, click. So now I got everything going around in the loop. And I'm going to use the connect tool settings. And I'm going to divide this up by 2. Hit OK. And now I'm going to select this side a little bit differently. I'm just going to take my rectangle selection and select all the way down the middle here. So now you can see that it selected everything instead of me just clicking on it individually. Do the same operation. Connect. So now I'm going to go to Polygon Mode. And I want to inset these faces. So go to Inset. And I want to preserve the amount that I want to inset because I want to copy this around the other side. So let's say 3.5. Just type in 0 there to make it 3.5. So this is the amount that I want to carry around to the other sides. So using the connect settings, the inset settings, I can set a value here, an amount, and I can hit the plus sign here. Now it's going to inset again, but all I have to do is select the other faces that I want to inset, hit the plus sign, go around the other side, select these faces, hit the plus sign. Now this is the last side, select these faces. Now since this is the last side, I can just hit the check mark here to hit OK. So now what I did was I went around this whole object and I inset by amount of 3.5 based on the selection I had. Okay, so now let me go back in here, and instead of inset, I want to extrude. Now I'm going to do the same operation. I'm going to go extrude settings. Now I don't want to extrude outward, I want to extrude inward. So I'm going to reverse this to a negative value. Let's say something like -5. So I'm just going to drop a 0 in there, hit enter. So -5 is the amount that I want to extrude backward by. So I'm going to hit the plus sign again, select these faces, hit the plus sign. Oops, I think I hit it too many times. Now right now my 3ds Max is running into an error. Now currently it's not allowing me to undo. My undo button is not actually working. Now this is what one of the things I was referring to where 3ds Max is really buggy. Sometimes when you have the program open for so long, you're going to run into errors like this where you cannot undo. Even though I just did this operation, I'm hitting undo and nothing is actually happening. So we can salvage this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this face here that I created and I'm going to go to selection and I'm just going to hit delete. So now these faces are open here. So now I can go into edge mode and I'm going to select the edges here. I'll select the edges here, edges here. And what I want to do is I want to bridge from this top part right here all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going to click all of these edges here too by holding control. So now you see that I have the top row here. I have 1, 2, 3 edges selected. I'm going to go down. I'm going to hit these 3 edges here. So I'm going to bridge in between all of these edges here. So I'm going to hit the bridge tool, hit bridge, and now you see it has closed this up. So now this is actually working here. And now I can go to the other side and now I can extrude this again. So I'm going to go to Extrude Settings, +5, -5. Hit the check mark. I'll select these faces here. Extrude, -5, hit OK. Now, you notice here in the corner that I extruded back a little bit too much because my corners here are intersecting each other. It's causing a little intersection here. So you see this little lip here? It's causing an intersection because I extruded back a little bit too much. So I'm going to fix this by bringing the faces forward a little bit in the direction that it's facing. So I'm going to click on these 3 here, and I want to bring it forward by +2 on the x-axis. Now the direction it's facing, I want to go in a negative x direction. Because right now x is facing backward to this, it's going this direction here, but I want to move it in this direction here. Now I want to move it by a set amount. So I can actually key in the amount that I want to move this by. So I hit F12 on the keyboard. Now it gives me a transform type in. Now here you have your absolute values, and this is where these edges exist in space, in real world space. So you see these values here, absolute value, are also down here, absolute value. Now I want to offset this from the absolute value by a value of -2. So to show you this, I'm just going to put in here -2, hit enter, and now you see it brings that forward a little bit. Now I want to do the same thing on the opposite side. Select these faces, but now notice which direction the x-axis is facing is positive. So now instead of putting -2 in here, I want to put just 2, +2, and it brings that forward in that direction. And now because I brought those back and forward in the x direction, if I go to the side here, you'll see that the y direction is going this way, but I want to go the opposite way. So I want to put this in a -y direction. So -y. So I'm going to type in -2, and that brings that forward. Opposite side of that, select these faces. Now it's in a positive y direction. So I just want to type 2 and bring that forward. So now my faces are a little bit better now. And the corners here are not intersecting with each other. You can see that they're actually fixed now all the way around. And this is what I wanted. So now I've been really careless and I have not saved this file at all. So instead of saving this, since this is just for the purpose of the tutorial, I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to Hold. So this is another way of saving without actually saving the file. This is what Hold is going to do, is store this in memory. So right now when I hit Hold, it's going to be stored in memory. So any changes that I do to this, I can revert back to if I have an issue. So now I kind of want to put a row of segments going straight across here. And this is going to be fairly easy. I can go to Edge Mode, and I just do a selection right across here. And I'm going to use the Connect tool. And this will work out. And this is pretty perfect how I want it. Just 2 segments going across. So I'm just going to hit OK. But now let's say I want to give this some extra depth. So I want to chamfer these edges outward, away from each other. So I'm going to use the Chamfer tool to kind of separate the edges. So now I'm kind of separating these edges here. So this is another way of making more segments. But I don't want to make the segments too far apart. I kind of want to just use this by a value of 1. Just hit OK. So now what I want to do is I want to make a bridge all the way across. Now you notice that when I made these new segments here, it's not going straight across. Right now you see that this line is kind of curved. It's curved around the edges here. So I'm going to fix that. Before I go any further, I'm going to fix that. So now I'm going to not right click, but I'm going to undo, see if it works. No, it doesn't. So currently my undo button still doesn't work, but I want to go back a step. But now since I had the whole option, I can go back to edit and tell it to fetch. Tell it yes. And now look what it did. It reverted back to my previous step where I was when I first hit the whole operation. So now I can go back to edge mode. And let's try this again. I'm going to go to the Connect tool, go to Settings, Segments by 2, hit OK. And this time, now I notice that my lines are not straight here, and I want them to be straight up and down. So I'm going to select this loop here. So again, select the first edge, hold Shift, select the next edge, and it goes all the way around. And I want to make this straight up and down. So I'm going to actually use a new technique using the Scale tool, and I'm going to scale it down on the Z-axis. So by doing this, if I drag downward, you'll notice that this edge now is starting to straighten out. So I usually do this about 2 or 3 times just to make sure. Now you notice this edge is straight now, and this edge is still going, this one is going down, this one's going down, it's kind of crooked. So I'm going to select this edge here, hold Shift, select the loop, and on the Z-axis, I'm going to scale this downward So I'm clicking, dragging. So now that these are straight up flat, and this is how I wanted originally. So now I'm going to select this, hold Control, hold Shift. Now select these segments here, this loop. I'm going to do this operation again with the chamfer. And I want it by a value of 1. Hit OK. And the last thing I want to do is I want to make a little window sill here. I want to make a little lip here. So I'm going to go to Polygon Mode. I'm going to select this face here. Select the opposite face here. And I'm just going to bridge the gap. Select this face here, and bridge the gap. So now we got a little bit more interesting geometry here. So I'm going to go around the other sides, do the same exact thing. Select the opposite faces here, hit bridge. I'm going to do this really quickly now. So I have to go around all 4 sides and do this. Oh, now I accidentally made a selection that I did not want. So to get rid of the selection, I'm going to hold Alt and click to get rid of that selection. Hold Control, click, bridge, click, hold Control, click, bridge. And the last side, click, hold Control, click, bridge, and last one. So now we kind of got some more interesting things to look at. So now I want to unhide my other elements here. So I can go to unhide all, and now I can get everything back. So this is a quick way you can make a building for your skyscraper. And this about does it for this tutorial. If you have any questions, just email me.